5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
This is About Space, America's return to space, with news and information on our U.S. space program.
From our About Space Today World Headquarters, I'm John Gomez. This week in space, Boeing Starliner is delayed again, NASA's pre-fire mission to study the poles, and a NASA ESA Mars rover mission. This and more next, as America and the world is listening to About Space Today.
D&D Cruise and Tours is the official agent for About Space, and we invite you to come fly away to all-inclusive resort island destinations, or a cruise vacation from Port Canaveral, and even visit the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, or just come and see the parks. Call for a discount cruise or an island getaway or the Florida beaches. Call today. The call is free, and so are our services. Call 877-747-8631. That's 877-747-8631. We are Florida's group travel specialists.
Welcome back. Well, it seems that Boeing's Starliner spacecraft crew flight test is delayed. Again. The attempted launch on May 6 was scrubbed a few hours before liftoff when the launch team noticed a buzzing valve in the Atlas V's upper stage. ULA's CEO Tori Bruno addressed the media to clear up any questions about the initial scrub.
This was really more about flight rules than it was about the significance of the event, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Our philosophy is we don't change the fueled state of the vehicle when the crew is present. You can do it otherwise from that, and other people do, but that's our philosophy, and so we built our flight rules around that and our procedures and our decision points. What occurred, as was said, is that we have a mechanical valve that vents the ullage pressure on the lock, so it's venting gas. It's not dissimilar to many other valves like that. You have one in your home on your hot water tank that's not all that different. And every now and again, in rare occasions, a valve like that can get into a position where it's just off the seat, its temperature, its stiffness, everything is just right, and it'll flutter, or it'll buzz in this case, and cycle. And that we've seen that before. We've seen a sustained buzz like this on AV-53. We've seen short buzzes maybe 3 or 4 times. And what you would typically do is activate the solenoid that forces the valve closed, cycling the valve, if you will, and then you turn that off and you let it return, and it almost always stops. It has in fact stopped. Once we had the crew off, we cycled the valve and it stopped buzzing. If this were a satellite, that is our standard procedure, and the satellite would already be in orbit. But that changes the state of the fueled Centaur, and we don't do that when people are present.
The launch was then rescheduled to May 17th before a helium leak was discovered in Starliner's service module. It was then moved to May 21st, then finally to May 25th, the current attempt date. About Space Today will have live coverage of that launch attempt with David Denault and Don Meyer, so make sure you tune into our YouTube page starting at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. In other news, NASA is preparing for back-to-back launches of CubeSats that are designed to provide data for improving Earth's climate. The Polar Radiant Energy in the Far Infrared Experiment, or PREFIRE, is set to launch on May 22nd on an Electron rocket from Rocket Lab's Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand. The second CubeSat, designated PREFIRE and ICE, will launch about 3 weeks later. The satellites will collect information on emissions at far infrared wavelengths longer than 15 microns at the Earth's poles. Here's a little more on PREFIRE from the experts.
Each of our PREFIRE CubeSats carry something called a thermal infrared spectrometer that looks down at the Earth and gathers energy being emitted from the planet at different wavelengths.
Just imagine a rainbow. When you see a rainbow, you see the different colors in the rainbow, and what happens is light gets dispersed. Similarly, we see the different wavelengths split up, and you can measure each of these wavelengths, and that's what the spectrometer does. It spectrally separates the radiation into different wavelengths.
These wavelengths were going to give us really important information about how the surface is changing in the polar regions, whether that's going from an ice-covered surface to a melted surface, or whether it's going from sea ice to open ocean.
Finally this week, NASA and the European Space Agency have completed an agreement in which NASA will provide hundreds of millions of dollars of support for a European Mars rover mission. The agreement was signed between the two space agencies on May 16th at the ESA's headquarters in Paris. NASA contributions replace elements of the mission originally provided by Roscosmos, which had developed the landing platform for the Rosalind Franklin mission and planned to launch the spacecraft on a Proton in September 2022. However, ESA called off the partnership weeks after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. The mission is expected to launch in 2028. Make sure you check out our Facebook page, aboutspace.today, for launches and landings, and invite your family and friends to listen weekly. You can find us on your favorite podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Libsyn, and more. Be sure to join David Denault twice a month for Special Report and Don Meyer every Friday for America in Space. Whether you're listening on the International Space Station or just on your phone, thanks for joining me. I'm John Gomez, and you just learned a little bit about space today.